Okay, good morning, everybody. Sadly, this is the final talkback of the three that we've done during the Ashland Independent Film Festival this year. We began Friday with a panel on the history of activist documentary media with two leaders of significant independent film institutions, Cartemquin Films, which we're honoring this year for the 50th anniversary, and New Day Films. And this talkback today complements that. And we have here two leading independent documentarians who are also now pioneers of some of the latest explorations in documentary form through transmedia and virtual reality. They've branched out in this direction. And the person who is probably the leading authority on this kind of work, we were able to bring here from USC to moderate this panel. Not only is she an expert in this area, but she's also a good friend of these two filmmakers that she's going to introduce. So, Vicki Callahan is an associate professor of practice in the Division of Media Arts and Practice at USC. And she teaches and writes about issues of digital culture, social media and remix, transmedia and media strategies for social change. Her books, she's written a book on the crime serials of Louis Foyad. She's edited a collection, Reclaiming the Archive, Feminism and Film History. She's working on a book currently on the silent film star director Mabel Normand. And she's the organizer of the website, which you should check out, Feminism 3.0, and she co-authors the site transmediaactivism.com. I'm very grateful to you, Vicki, for coming down, and I'm going to turn things over to you, and you'll introduce our other guests. Thank you.
Okay, great. Is this on? No. Oh, I can turn it on. Okay. Yeah, it went off. Okay. I'm really excited to be here today. Both of these artists I know well, and I've been in dialogue with both of them for years on emergent forms and documentary, and how these forms have and how these forms also have an impact on issues of media access, authorship, audience engagement, and social change. I'm really interested today, not so much whether technology is utopian or dystopian, since we know it can be either, and if you saw the Herzog film yesterday, lo and behold, he did a good job kind of talking about that, exploring that. But much more rather how we might really ensure that technology, how we shape and ensure a technology that's not a phantom limb, i.e. we think something there that is not really there, and rather a tech that facilitates work, which is ethical, compassionate, empathetic, and produces transformative change. So we have an incredible opportunity before us to reach larger and more diverse communities with this technology and new forms, and indeed to enter into partnership and communities as co-creators and co-activists. We can move from a detached point of view to multi-perspectival and immersed experiences, but I always start with the question before all that, before the tech bells and whistles, before the multipath narrative, before the polyvocal soundscape. What is your objective? What's your desired outcome? And also, what does change look like? So we can start then with Helen DeMichel. She's a San Francisco-based media artist and educator. Her narrative documentary and new media works have earned her a Rockefeller Intercultural Film Video Fellowship, several NEA awards. She's also served as the National Director of the National Alliance for Media Arts and Culture, and is a board member in jurates for the Peabody Awards for Electronic Media. Her episodic documentary, Lunch Love Community, is in distribution with Bullfrog Films, and she's currently visiting professor at University of Colorado Boulder. I've actually been teaching Lunch Love Community in my classes, both my undergrad and my grad classes for years, and Helen has been really kind to come in and be a visitor to my class via Skype to talk about her ideas of the open space a documentary. I'm most interested to see how this work has evolved and how it's also bridged to another project related Berkeley versus Big Soda. So I'm really interested in both the work in open space doc and also participatory media. So with that, I'll turn it over to Helen.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard, for bringing us here on a Sunday morning and having us talk about interesting work that I hope brings people together more than separates us through the screens. So let me just briefly tell you about this project and how it's evolved and iterated over the years. Lunch Love Community is a mosaic of 12 short films from 3 minutes to 12 minutes apiece that from 2010 until 2013 and a half lived online as a transmedia project. And the way that we considered transmedia was really as something that was not so much just multi-platform, but that transcended boundaries. It was a project where form followed function, and its target audience, Vicki, as you kind of asked, or what its intention was to open up a great dialogue in the food justice world about how we can transform our food systems, specifically through nutrition in the schools. So the films were not just one long 90-minute film, for example, about this amazing initiative that happened in Berkeley from the late 90s until now and continues on, but has gone through many different kinds of dynamic changes. But also the project was made to see how we could flow films into a variety of different encounters. And so it was designed to inhabit and live in different worlds. A documentary that could take advantage at the time in 2010 of expanded broadband, using social media. And again, we have to look back at this period as really it wasn't that long ago when we couldn't look at films online. And so it flowed through social media, it lived for activists, it was shown and has been shown in the film world and in the world of media arts and new media. So it started off as a watch and share website where viewers could literally take the films and re-embed them in different spaces. So rather than at the time when there were many transmedia, very immersive, large, and complex projects that were being made mostly in Canada and some that were showcased at Sundance Institute, this project was much more sort of like the speedboat on the ocean of the internet. It was light, it had the films where they could be taken, used, and shown, and moved very effectively through lots of different kinds of environments. Over the years, they were seen online, and they were seen in many kinds of events, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, called media socials, which was where the short films were like theater meets the town hall. People would come together for dialogue, because really that's what the films were meant for, was to create a sense of dialogue with real people and a real audience to talk about real food justice issues. So that was in many ways kind of the intention. And over the years, the films evolved online and eventually became a DVD that's now in non-theatrical distribution through Bullfrog Films. And what was remarkable sort of about this is it reverse engineered off the internet. They're no longer all available online for free, but they're all available for non-theatrical, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But what I'd like to do now is just show you one tiny 3-minute piece from the project, and you can go to the website and also learn more about it. But this is just to really give you a flavor of the original Lunch Love Community style of film, of which there were many different styles among the 12 films, which I really enjoy talking about.
Most all gardens have started with one interested parent who's come into the classroom and say, You know, I know gardening, can I take half class? And then it just starts unfolding from there. One parent, one teacher, one class.
It's raining!
When they start growing things, when there is an interaction with soil, that it's okay, and there's plants, and there's good food, and look at this place, it's beautiful, it invites that. They are actually transformed by what they grow. This month is, what month is it? May, June, July, August. When I come back, it'll be September. That's how high the corn's going to be. This is kind of like a life laboratory. The kindergartners all learn about flowers. The first graders learn about worms. Second graders learn about insects. It's about feeding, it's about nourishing, it's about teaching the whole child. Kids, look here. Anybody know this tree?
I got one.
This is actually a pomegranate.
I found
Do you know the name of this plant?
They don't do anything.
Lamb ears, very good. We had no garden here. It was under construction. So I went and tore up some of the lawn on the side of the school, and we planted fava beans. And the kids were so excited. We taught, science and math, ecology, all in one patch of fava beans. You don't need a big garden. There's so much you could do with one seed, one plant. Just get the kids outdoors, touching, kinesthetically, tactile. Because what they say, if you say something to them, it goes right one ear out the other. If you read to them, they take it a little bit. But if they actually get it in their bodies, in their hands, in their senses, they absorb it.
I found a strawberry.
I think it's definitely making a change, making a difference.
So the project originally had started off as a vision for a long-form film. But given the fact that we had to raise money, I and my co-producer, Sophie Constantino, both knew a lot about the possibilities of the internet and the very interesting space that we could create in, both being able to have a social practice as well as an aesthetic documentary practice as well. So at that moment in 2010, we created these 7 short films, always thinking there was going to be a long-form film. But at the same time, due to what funders had wanted to see as impact, we developed this form that was really interesting called the Media Social. So we could take several of the short films, work with a local organization or partners, and create a kind of event where there would be local experts or parents or people who are really advocating for food justice, and create these kind of live events with the films. So when we talk about transmedia, the films lived online and had lots of participatory commentary, moving through different kinds of worlds of blogs. We could keep up with the analytics and so forth, but also were really grounded in a real life kind of experience with real people, because my idea of open space documentary is that these films have a way of triggering dialogue rather than trying to force you or persuade you to agree with a particular point of view. So for me, that's what was really interesting about making these short stories. So over the period of 3 or 4 years, with a lot of dialogue and interactive engagement with communities and different ideas, I, in 2012, dropped the idea of making a long-form film. I thought, why not? There's still more stories, there's still more interest out there. So what happened then was continuing on with the idea of a mosaic of shorts that people could, quote, use or share in many different forms. So that, to me, is the promise of the idea of transmedia. Vicki, you think? Yes. Okay, and so eventually, though, given the way that the internet works, for anyone who works in media online, you know that you are a gardener for life with that project, because if you don't take care of it, it will decay and go to seed, because you're constantly tending the technologies. So what we decided to do then was to create a DVD and a streaming product for a distributor. So it all went offline, and I have this slide here of what it looks like, which is 4 films in a theme called Heart, 4 films in a theme called Body, and 4 films in a theme called Mind, and also conversation and discussion guides, so that the films, again, could be used in this open space model where they trigger, again, real life conversation. And so what really came out of this project was how to build relationships, which for me was really great. It was a way to immerse in a community, which was my community of Berkeley, California. And as a mother, I really couldn't travel a lot to parachute into foreign countries and drop in and make really gigantic films, because it just wasn't where I was at. So this was like a really great project workaround to grow into my community and understand what the issues were. So the media social concept was not only, we didn't only take it around the United States into different environments, but also locally in Berkeley. So what happened, and you never know this when you're starting to make a film project like this, by 2012, the funding for all the programs that you will see in the Lunch Love Community Project from the feds had disappeared. So a whole new generation of parents had to really come together to figure out how they could save the cooking, the gardening, and the school lunch program in the Berkeley schools that had started by a group of parents in a community in the late 90s. So one thing that had occurred to me in this period of time, looking back now on making this project, was it wasn't a film that could follow only one particular hero or heroine. It was a complete community that made this story happen. So the shorts are all different aspects of all the kind of different citizens and kind of grassroots efforts that came together, different people, different on the stage at different times, from Alice Water to a parent in a health despaired community, helping to make things really change for children in terms of awareness of nutrition. So building all these relationships, I'd go to Food Policy Council meetings, I'd watch, I think. I was not really an advocate, but I stood aside. Things started to evolve where by 2013, and I'm going through this really quickly, a group of parents and advocates in Berkeley decided the way that they were going to be able to save these programs, which by this point, possibly the only artifact that would have been left from this amazing what would I call it, project that Berkeley was undertaking would be the films, because everything could have disappeared. So the parents, again, 12 years later, get together with specific advocates around the region and decide that they are going to put together a soda tax to try and save the school lunch program and cooking and gardening programs in Berkeley. I was there, and in the last few weeks of the campaign, they had a little bit of money, and they decided to ask me if I could bring a little tiny couple of crew members to shoot the last 5 days of the campaign. I had also shot a series of different media socials in Berkeley where advocates had come together with our films to explain to communities of color in the area really what the soda tax possibilities were. And it was called Measure D. And so what happened then after that was last year in 2015, again, they had a tiny more bit of money, and they asked me to make a short film that would tell the story of what happened in Berkeley in a few minutes, so that again it could flow and be distributed through social media online in order to inspire other communities around the country to consider the idea of putting together a soda tax, or at least talking about the health issues. So I'd like to show that film if you don't mind. It is 12 minutes long, and I hope that you find it to be of interest to discuss.
The Center for Disease Control has predicted that if we don't change how things are going, 1/3 of all of children today will develop diabetes within their lifetime.
This is a tsunami coming together. So that's why we have to do something very bold.
You have sugary drinks that are so available, so cheap. Over $1 million a day is spent marketing to kids.
See kids drinking sodas all the time as if it's water, and then growing to learn about the impacts of that on their health, and also not being aware of long-term impacts of soda consumption on a regular basis.
I mean, so what? It's Berkeley. Like, these issues aren't affecting every community in the US and frankly around the planet.
Where we can win is if we get neighbors talking to neighbors, if we can get people taking time out of their lives to communicate why this is important to neighbors. Then we have the potential of winning.
Coke in the King has more for you. Coke in the King's your best buy, too.
You know, it used to be that diabetes was an old people's disease. But if you're 14 and pre-diabetic, and 20 and got full-on type 2 diabetes, and you're doing insulin replacement for the next 40 years of your life, and going to the hospital and having diabetic comas and having lower leg amputations, I mean, what is the cost of that to society?
And we know that there is a saturation of marketing around sugary drinks, and that in fact is even higher in African American Latino communities and lower income communities.
The Latinos that worked on this campaign feel more empowered. They came together for something that they knew was the right thing to do. Once I learned that 1 in 2 Latino children will get diabetes in their lifetime, I thought about my nephew, who at the time was, I think, 3, and I thought he could be one of them.
This is how much sugar is in 1 can of Coca-Cola. Which one of you would take this and dump this down your throat right now?
There is something that our children are being, and we as families are being assaulted with daily, and that is sugar-sweetened beverages.
We are charging the people who distribute the soda, not the retailer, not the manufacturer, the people who put it in their trucks and bring it to Berkeley to that corner store. So it's not the store owners that are being charged the tax, it's the distributors.
Children's health, not big soda wealth. Children's health, not big soda wealth. Children's health, not big soda wealth. Children's health.
I think that this measure provides a very actionable way to reduce sugary drink distribution and consumption through the proposed tax.
The reality is that this cent is going into the general fund and is not earmarked to do anything except to hurt business.
An additional 20 cents per 20 ounce is quite a significant amount to put right in the front face of the customer.
It's a tremendous step against opposition that has notches on its guns, but they're not going to notch one more in Berkeley.
Councilmember Mayo.
Yes.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Going to be a lot of lies. They're going to be sending people door to door with distortions and misinformation, and it's going to be tough. So we all need to work. We all need to work. This is the beginning. This is not the end.
Take a closer look at Measure D, the Berkeley beverage tax, and you start to notice something strange. Holes. Lots of holes.
Major funding provided by the American Beverage Association, California PAC.
People are coming from outside of our community and spending unlimited amounts of money to tell you that this is against your interest. How egregious is that? How offensive is that? That they think that they can buy your vote.
You know, this is a public space, and it shouldn't be for sale like this to big corporations to try and change people's minds or confuse them or manipulate them. It's outrageous.
Yes on thee, save your land. Yes on thee, no mercy. No, yes on thee.
The people that they hired were people of color. They were probably making $15, $20 an hour just to put up posters and wear that shirt. I'm sure they needed the money, but it falls into their tactics. It's who they advertise to. It's who they sell these products to. It's why the health disparities are the way they are. So that infuriates you. It makes you want to work harder. It makes you want to go out and knock on an extra door.
The key thing initially was to get everybody to believe that we could win, and that to win we had to work together. And the things we had to do was to build this grassroots army. And if we could do that, we could counter the millions of dollars that the industry would spend against us.
How you guys doing? The Yes and Measure D campaign, the Senate's here in Berkeley. Have you heard about it? Yeah, definitely.
If we do nothing, I guarantee less than half of these people will vote. The only way many of them will vote is human contact.
Hey there, I'm with the Yes on D campaign.
When you have hundreds, if not thousands of people going door to door, it had a power beyond what you can do in mail or media or anything else.
and today I'm volunteering with the Yes on Measure D campaign, the soda tax on the ballot.
Okay, I'm planning on voting yes on Measure D.
Awesome, awesome, awesome.
Working in my favor was the fact that I was canvassing in my own neighborhood, so that stood out to me as this familiarity, and that definitely stood out as soon as I hit the kind of ground running. That I'm actually talking with people that I already have an investment with outside of this issue.
Great, thank you so much for your support. You have a great night.
Once Berkeley makes this happen, more communities will see it, more Latinos will be more educated. They'll see there's something going on here.
I'm a volunteer with the Yes on D campaign in favor of the soda tax. Are you familiar with the soda tax here in Berkeley?
Lack of money was a huge problem. All the people that hadn't been paid, all the legal fees that we had pushed aside.
We ran out of lawn signs. They were very popular. We had 1,000 lawn signs out, and we had 1,000 more requests.
People would come from the street and they'd see us and then they'd come in and give us their change. Here, I don't have much, but here's $20 or here's 50 cents or something, you know?
We know why Big Soda has been pouring so much money into Berkeley and into communities all across this country. And it's not just their advertising and marketing, it is politics. They are scared to death that there are going to be some communities who stand up to them and say, no, we want to protect our kids. We don't want those soft drinks to create the public health menace that we now have in this country.
We knew it was going to be tough, but at the end, we knew it was going to be okay because people started stepping up.
I'm up at night, and it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I get an email and said, we're thinking of helping.
I just wanted to call and confirm that you know where your polling place is.
We did not stop phoning until 8 o'clock that night.
Hi there, may I please speak to Machine?
During the campaign, I had the feeling that we were gonna win.
With 8 precincts reporting, I can say that the yes percentage, 73%. Can you believe it?
Y'all are the ones that did it. We built an incredible coalition here in Berkeley.
Yeah.
Upon the steps of many other already existing relationships, and that was what was so beautiful.
That this is still a government of, by, and for the people.
California becoming the first city to pass a soda tax. Heads up on this one, folks. More than 3/4 of voters saying yes, they really do want to have a 1 penny tax per ounce on sugary drinks. Charge us more because it's good for us. Those in favor say that it will curb people from drinking soda, sweetened tea, energy drinks, all evil and bad, folks. I don't know about that.
This campaign, Berkeley versus Big Soda, was the first sugary drink tax to pass in the United States. There have been 30-some other attempts. There are people who say, well, that's Berkeley and no one else can do it. And I say that's absolutely wrong. Everyone else can do it.
You know, once Goliath has been beaten, others think, well, maybe we can too, and that's the important part of it.
Our work may encourage other communities of color throughout California, throughout the nation, to do similar efforts.
I know I did graduate from school with a particular disdain for the political process. For me, it was seeing how empowered they were. For people at such a young age to actually have their voice heard, I was just thinking, wow, we've really done something huge here, and this doesn't stop tonight.
So just really quickly to wrap up, because there is a little bit of a participatory media, tiny story, Vicki, that you can ask me about later. I just want to say that, you know, we are working on the shoulders of all documentary filmmakers who dare to go out into, you know, the social world and, you know, bring these films to audiences. And now, my final slide, as of last week, in about a week that it's been online, this little film, it's had 15,500 actual video views. So I guess we have to ask ourselves in many ways, you know, is transmedia a really powerful tool for personal, I think, transformation as well as social transformation? And I'd like to leave it at that and then move on later and sort of fill in the gaps of questions that you may have. Thank you.
Is this one? Okay. I just have to talk really close. Okay. So let's move on to Brad, and we're gonna have a little bit different structure with Brad because Brad and I used to be colleagues at UW Milwaukee, and so we're used to like barking at each other and being in dialogue with each other. So we're actually gonna just talk a little bit after. I'm gonna have some questions pointed to him about his work. But let me just say a little bit about Brad. He's an award-winning filmmaker and president of 371 Productions. He's won 2 DuPonts, one for the recent Al Jazeera America Hard Earned, and another for his, yes, sorry, and another for his 2001 film, Ghost of Attica. His first virtual reality film, Across the Line, about accessing abortion amid hostile protests, premiered at Sundance in 2016 and is played all over, including South by Southwest and soon Hot Docs and Tribeca. His 2012 movie, As Goes Janesville, which was on PBS and Independent Lens, was nominated for a News and Documentary Emmy. His career includes work with Frontline and Bill Moyers, and his company also takes on other media projects too. Executive producer for Precious Lives, radio podcast and print series about young people and gun violence. And BizViz is his corporate accountability app available for iPhones, and that's just kind of tip of the iceberg with Brad. Brad and I, again, have been kind of exchanging some ideas on VR, and I know of his work with his collaborator, Nani de la Peña. I actually was very fortunate to work with Nani. She's a kind of superstar PhD in our program at USC Media Arts and Practice, which is a critical arts making PhD. So I sort of know of her work, and I was really excited when Brad's working with her. So I wanted to start out with this because I knew of your own work. Maybe you just talk a little bit about the collaboration. How much did you have to give up directorial control for the new form, or was it different from filmmaking in general? Maybe we'll start with that.
Sure. Or do you want me to show the quick video first?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. My bad.
No, it's you're good. I was just going to show a quick, this is like a 1-minute video, just gives you an overview of Across the Line, and then we can start with that question.
Wicked Jezebel feminists. You're worthless. You're a piece of trash. Maybe your parents should have aborted you.
How do we get people to understand and become a witness and be on scene and experience what these young women have to experience?
Shame on you. God's gonna destroy you in the lake of fire and you won't be smiling then.
I don't know that people really understand what it feels like to have people telling you what to do with your body.
We see virtual reality as an amazing opportunity to actually put someone in someone else's shoes.
Oh my gosh.
So we're going to have 11 audio.
And to show what people go through when they try to access health care at some health centers in this country.
We really felt there would be something very interesting with combining the 360 spherical video with the CG created volumetric virtual reality, so that individuals could feel like they're on scene, as witnessing somebody else's experience.
Know where we should go for the clinic?
You're here to pray at the abortion clinic, or you're here to go to the abortion clinic?
And then be there themselves.
You're a wicked woman, you know that? What do you think you're doing here? What do you think you're doing here?
This was really challenging because we set out to do something that was documentary style, but adapting it to this new medium.
Then we had to do a motion capture session where we motion captured both body and facial recreation.
Wicked Jezebel feminists. Yeah, you shouldn't have been a whore.
We went through this whole workshop process where a woman whose background is in trauma-informed theater would work with the women to surface the emotion of those stories. And Christina, she's a woman who has gone through an abortion herself. We tried to lift that story up and bring it as close to possible to consciousness, then go shoot the documentary scene.
That immersive experience will allow people to see what it's actually like for these women.
I don't think you can divorce violent things that happen from the violent, hateful rhetoric that is its fuel. Once they see it, once they experience it, they are going to say, this is wrong. Women, men, young people, they should not face this abuse and harassment outside of health centers. And I think this is a game changer.
So, actually, now seeing this, I have another question for you first. This is how Brad and I go. I've given 10 questions for everyone he can answer. But just because I know a little, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the logistics there in terms of the Planned Parenthood piece. How did the documentary filming contribute? In other words, what is it that we're seeing in the video? I know Nani likes to work with audio first. Yeah. So maybe if you could just talk and then does the video around that audio piece. So maybe you could just talk about the logistics of how this is done.
Sure. Great question, Vicki. So in virtual reality, first of all, you have this intense limitation, which is that the camera sees all around and up and down. So it's not like traditional documentary where, for 65 years, we were just trying to get the cameras to be smaller and the equipment to be more portable so it could go like this and follow people. Now you can't do that in virtual reality. So we had to figure out a way to do this and get as close to documentary as we possibly could. So you heard a little bit about the workshop. That was partially to kind of, get to a point where we were getting some of that emotional truth that makes good documentary so successful. And then, and we can talk about this, there's some big ethical issues, I think, that get raised, because what we did is we basically took a camera, put it inside the car. Christina and her friend Sam, both of whom had accompanied each other to Christina's abortion in her past, were essentially reenacting a scene from their lives. And then, as you saw, we had kind of brought it back to the surface, but it was a setup in a sense. And then when they drove through the protesters on location, whatever happened, happened. So that was truest to verite documentary. And the catch, the ethical catch, which we could probably talk about too, is of course the man who comes over and talks to Christina in the piece has no idea that there's a camera there. Now we did do 3 runs, and by the 3rd time someone said, I think they have a camera in there, So I think that they kind of figured it out. The audio in the CG in the 3rd scene, there's 3 scenes. The first scene was sort of a reenactment of an appointment at a healthcare clinic. That was workshopped and developed from Christina's story, and then we did it. Improv, sort of. The second scene is the one I just spoke about, and in the 3rd scene, you become Christina, essentially. And then you, in the volumetric experience, in the HTC Vive, which lets you walk through space, you actually walk through all the protesters, and everything they say is audio that we captured from around the country. In fact, everything in the piece that you hear any protester say is sync sound, is audio from around the country. But as you point out, I mean, documentary is a very different thing, and we were trying really hard to move beyond what the approach has been so far in most VR documentaries, which is to put the camera in the middle of a volatile situation and essentially just go and get out of the frame. And we wanted to make something that's more in the spirit of the work that I like to do, the work that Cartemquin likes to do, which is to be much closer and more intimate with your subjects and with the scenes.
Well, maybe, and I can come back to this question of collaboration, because actually is something I have a question for both of you, but let's just follow up on this ethical question a bit. Because we have this technology, and I'm less kind of concerned about the hybrid kind of component than just the technology itself. And I'm wondering about if you could speak just about this question of technology sensationalizing or turn it into a spectacle when you have such complex issues at stake. And also about this question of immersion, right? Does that prevent us from, to what extent, yes, it puts us in that person's position, but does it have a sense of really losing where reality ends also, or does it connect us to those different points of view? We're so in a silo in some sense, and that's another question I have about VR, the kind of the future of VR, how we could make it better. But maybe we could just start with that kind of question of spectacle, and then also the immersion experience in terms of ethics.
Okay. I'll try. So maybe I'll tell a story of how I got started in this. So you saw the three of us who collaborated, Nani, Jeff, and me. So Jeff and I both live in Milwaukee, and I know his wife pretty well. So we were at our local co-op, our food co-op, eating whole foods and organic foods, which has a very generous school nutrition program, by the way. Yes. And we were over in the meat aisle, and Kelly, his wife, said, you really have to talk to Jeff about these cameras he's working with and stuff. And Jeff is actually a very shy, introverted person, so it took a little while. I was like, well, what are you doing? He's like, I'm messing around with cameras. Like, what? What are you doing? And finally, he said, I'm working in virtual reality, and I've been sort of in these chat rooms for about 4 years talking to the guy who started Oculus and Nani and a bunch of people. There were not that many, like 15 people basically, who were messing around in virtual reality. And one of the things that has always been a goal in filmmaking, and I mean, not just me, Cartemquin in this tradition, all these verite, social, engaged documentary filmmakers, is to immerse you in a story so that you can understand what it's like to be somebody else and to have their experience and maybe open up some kind of empathic pathway that leads you to social change or to get involved or some kind of action. And so I just was like, Jeff, we should try to do something with this in the social issue space. And the first thing we actually tried to do, and I think we're going to circle back to it now in a project, is work with boys and girls clubs and try to give people the experience of what it's like in that very dangerous space that exists between school and the club for a lot of kids. And so anyway, so that was like where our first project began, and we started talking to boys and girls clubs, but at the end of the day, they were sort of like, I don't get virtual reality. So now they'll get it, I think. And then I had already been working with Planned Parenthood. We had done a project called Be Visible, where women shared abortion stories to try to reduce the stigma around abortion. Women of different ages, different races, and different kinds of stories. So there was already a relationship there. At the same time, Nani had a piece about Syria and what it's like to be on scene when a bomb goes off in Aleppo at Sundance the previous year. And Dawn Legans, who you saw in the short piece from Planned Parenthood, saw that and was starting to talk to Nani about VR. I was talking to their user experience people, Molly Egan, about VR. And then at a certain point, we realized there's this huge opportunity to collaborate. And so they got Nani and me together, and we figured it out. But to, I think, go to your question, to me, it's much less about spectacle. I mean, honestly, I think technology is cool, and I love messing around with stuff. But I think that if it's just about you putting on the goggles and having a wow experience, and then that wow experience is over right after, then what's the real point if your goal is to try to bring more people into a community of care around a particular issue? With this piece, we're particularly interested in some of the engagement campaigns we're doing. One of them is going to start hopefully in the summer with conservative women in the South who may consider themselves to be pro-life, or just not engaged with the issue around abortion, but they're very anti-bullying. And we think that there's an opportunity there to go door to door with these and to show probably a shorter version of the film as part of a door-to-door campaign. So that's the other thing, is it's so portable. You know, like it lacks scale in some important ways, but on the other hand, it has a kind of intimacy and scale as an experience that allows you to do those kinds of campaigns that you might not be able to do if you picked up this and just said, let's watch a flat film together. You know, you're in that space, you're concentrating. So I hope that goes a little bit to your question.
Yeah, I think that it kind of goes to this kind of follow-up question I have too. So scalability is one issue, but also what other, you know, just as now you've been working with it, what other sort of changes do you think VR needs? Because again, it's still that, you know, you're immersed in something and then you take the headphones off. It's great that you have, you know, using these as part of an engagement process. That's, I think, one step. But also what also I'm thinking about too is, just even in terms of the technology, sort of like more interactions with other participants, rather than, again, this kind of solo experience of VR, which is a little,
Yeah, totally.
gets to that question.
Totally. I mean, just yesterday morning, my best friend growing up's parents were in town in Milwaukee, where I live, and I got Dr. Chorches, who I call Dr. C, to put on the headset and, you know, give it a try. And then my son was doing it and stuff. And exactly what you're talking about. It's a very isolated experience. You're sitting around a breakfast table and one person has, you know, this on their face. It's not really the way to have a social experience. But the technology is so nascent. And there's a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. So one of it is, I can't remember which company, maybe it was Oculus, which is Facebook, has figured out how to sync up to 1,800 of these. And so where they're heading in the entertainment space is definitely where you have a shared experience of all kinds of things, whether you're having a shared experience of a concert all around the country, or you're having a shared experience of a sporting event, or of watching a movie, a VR movie. That's the direction they're heading in. But I think that that gives you an enormous opportunity for engagement and interaction. So in the headset, and some of you, if you want to try it afterwards, there's a swivel chair over there. We can show you what it's like in the Gear VR, which has more functionality than Google Cardboard is just the sort of, you know, rudimentary form of VR, and then it kind of has different steps. I have the HTC Vive up on the screen there. That's the walk-around experience that we did at Sundance. But Gear VR is becoming very affordable, and you just slide your phone in, and because you have more functionality, you can look in a certain direction or move your head, and then you can tap the side and you make choices. So there's the opportunity soon to be able to interact with other people and have a multi-person participatory experience. There's also opportunities to interact. There's a woman named Paisley Smith who's going to be with us at the IDA thing that we're doing in 2 weeks. She's created this really cool VR experience. It's just a simple question. It's what would you do in a self-driving car if you were about to crash? And you're given 3 different choices, so it's an ethical problem. And again, you get to choose very seamlessly what you would do. I mean, you just tap, you look at your choice and you tap, and then your choice plays out. It's an animated experience, almost with stick figures, so you're not going to go careening down the cliff on Route 1, but it's still a pretty powerful experience. There's a lot of people, you know, engaging with it that way, and I think ultimately what we like to do, even with this experience, is to build it out with branches, so that what I'm really interested in as a documentary filmmaker is also who are the protesters and why are they showing up? Some of them told me, you know, in the research we did, I spent a lot of time with protesters. Some of them told me that they had streaks of like 500 and 600 days straight that they have gone to a clinic to spend 4 or 5 hours of their day protesting. So obviously very convicted people, and I want to know more about them and their background, and want to also know more about the women who are coming to seek an abortion and more about the staff. And so there's some HR possibilities in that as well to bridge some gaps of understanding. But again, just functional-wise, to be able to branch in like a game, because it's actually built on a game engine. In fact, it's built on 2 game engines, which was a gigantic pain in the rear. But yeah, there's lots of opportunity to do that kind of stuff.
Okay, so that actually makes me kind of think about also too this kind of question of empathy and dialogue in VR. So do you think, because again, we can see all kinds of documentary films that create incredible empathy, right? Did you find working with this that it was a more, and we'll see this too as people try this out too, did you find that the empathy was more powerful with the VR than other documentary forms? And also this question of dialogue. I think that's really important, the way you're talking about utilizing it both as one part of community engagement, not an experience in and of itself, and then also with multiple voices being revealed in that experience. But let's kind of go back to that empathy question. What do you, because you're someone who's made a lot of documentary films.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am not a person who thinks that VR is the new thing and it's going to replace long-form documentaries and short-form documentaries and transmedia. I mean, it's all just good stuff in the garden to use. It's just a matter of deploying which form works for your goals. Exactly. So, you know, and I work in radio also and in app design, so it just depends on what the goals are. I do want to say, like, one of the highest compliments I got was actually a man named David Simpson, who's an editor that works with Cartemquin for a long time and very frequently. And he came through he was a big skeptic, and he came through our booth at Sundance, and he came out with tears and said, "You guys have done it. You know, you've done what I tried to do in a 90-minute documentary in 7 minutes, and I've had this complete emotional experience I'll never forget." But again, I don't want to set up a binary. I mean, it's not one or the other. At Sundance, we actually have some research behind this because we have the good fortune of working with Planned Parenthood. And so about 60% of the people who came through had an emotional experience that resulted in tears. And we also created a kind of decompression space, not as much as we wanted, but we feel like that's actually a necessary part of the experience, is to talk about it. So at Hot Docs is the first place that really has been accommodating to do this, where we set up some couches in a separate space. And that, you know, what I'd really like to do is have different participants in conversation with each other, and then find ways, if they're motivated, to get involved in one way or another. But you kind of need that. It's like the announcement I made at the beginning is like, it's not fair just to throw people into this experience. There was one man who went through it at Sundance, and it turned out that his former wife had gone to get an abortion while they were divorcing, and they were going through a very traumatic time, and then she committed suicide about 6 months after. It was very traumatic for him, and he came out, you know, and I felt like we didn't have the resources in place actually for him, so it's something to really prepare for if you're, you know, working in this kind of emotional space.
So let's go back to the question I started with then, finally. That question of collaboration, how much did you have to give up? Because this is a really complex project with technology and a partner that is also bringing that technology into you. Was it any different than collaboration in filmmaking in general, or did it feel like you were giving up more control? And just kind of speak to that question.
Sure. Well, first of all, do people know Nani de la Peña? Have you heard of her before? Well, she's known as like the godmother of VR. She's been in this space for like over 4 years doing immersive journalism, and her pieces are incredible. So I will admit that I was pretty intimidated at the beginning. We finally connected on the phone, and I was just kind of, you know, trying to be very respectful and sort of saying like, we'd like to collaborate with you. But she has really defined, you know, a whole field of filmmaking essentially with what she's doing. And if any of you get a chance to see her work, one of them is on the New York Times app. And by the way, this is probably going to be on we're not quite sure, but we think so. But it's called Kiya, K-I-Y-A, and it's the experience of being in the middle of a domestic violence incident. It's all taken from audio, reconstructed from 911 calls and from her interviews with the participants. Very powerful stuff. So once I got over, you know, whatever intimidation I felt at first, it turns out Nani, like most really great filmmakers, it's just all about the work. So we got together in Los Angeles. It was kind of a crazy experience because her company is soaring and there's like 5,000 people coming in and out of her offices all the time. And eventually we found the focus to sit down for about 4 hours and really figure out how, what my background is in documentary and what her background is in this recreation and animation space could work together. And it was dicey. We actually got to a point where we thought that they weren't compatible because it's such a leap to make when you're in the second scene to get to the third scene. And we weren't even there. We hadn't even really scripted it out yet, but we were pretty doubtful. And then we both took long walks out away from each other. And then we came back and we kind of figured it out. And this way that you could become the protagonist grew out of that. So I think it's 80% successful. I still think that certainly in the cardboard, there's a lot of room to improve. In the HTC Vive, I think we're getting pretty close to it, but what you want is a more seamless experience, and we're not quite there yet.
Okay, I think what I'd like to do is, do you want to show your clip right before you do the demo, or do you want to show it now, or which is more helpful to you?
I thought I could show the how-to clip at the very end.
Okay, let's do that then. Because what I'd like to do is actually open it up to people. So thanks, Brad. So I'd like to actually open this up to the audience and see what kind of questions you folks have. Yes, and there's one right there.
I had a question about how, when a bunch of people are sitting around with a bunch of stuff on your head, can be communicating with others. How does that become a group experience?
Sure. I mean, part of it is you got to take it off to have the group experience. But part of what I was talking about is actually through the technology itself. So if you have a chance, anyone who comes after, I can show you in the Gear VR, the experience is much richer. You're actually in a store where you can choose to view different things, and there are ways that you can enable to communicate. It's just like multi-person gaming. So younger people who are very used to being in conversation with multiple people at once, either using Snapchat or WhatsApp or using games, it's a very easy leap to make, but VR, for those of us who aren't, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it is eventually you'll be able to just see who's online, see who's watching this at this time, have a conversation, move over to this space and do it. I think some of the things that are being developed look and feel a little bit like Second Life, if people are familiar with that, maybe without the avatar, but with the same idea of going to different spaces.
Thank you.
Thanks. I wanted to ask a question about language. And I think it's Merleau-Ponty, talking about POV shots, which is, and he was criticizing it. He was saying a POV shot in a movie, if you want to make the audience feel what it's like to be drunk, that's not, it's a great actor walking across the room. That's how you convey drunkenness. So I think what I want to challenge you a little bit about is, and I think you guys have been pretty good in being careful, but you keep hearing people say, oh, we're giving them the experience of what a woman going through these lines. Well, no, that's not her experience. This is the sensation of it, but it's not the experience. When we do a documentary, we always talk about the backstory. And so at some point, we're saying, this is who this person is. This is who their parents is. You're not carrying a fetus. They come with a history and a thing that makes it their particular experience. So I think it can create empathy, which we're all looking to, which is to understand and have a sense of what someone else may have felt. But it's not the same as their experience. So as this moves forward, I think it's important that we make a distinction. Otherwise, people are going to be misled to think, I felt what they felt.
That's a great point. And I just want to respond a little bit. That's a great point. And that's actually one of the frustrations of not being able to do the kind of branching that I was talking about, so that you can make it clear that you're telling a story. about somebody, and this is their experience. And frankly, what happened is we ran out of money and time and everything else to be able to do that kind of thing. But thank you, Gordon.
And actually, I wanted to see if Helen can jump in on this too, because it's a question for you as well, right? When we see your short forms films, we're actually, Helen just did a piece in Medium that's really great on this context and co-creation that is very much a part of making these films. So I'd like you to actually speak just a little bit about context so that people can understand that process for you in participatory media, because I think it goes to this question, again, of showing something acontextually, right?
Yeah, I'm a Brechtian, so I really am not interested in immersive experiences in that kind of sense. Not that, I think it's a tool that can be used in these transmedia environments, but I am someone who thinks people have to think critically in real life and, ask questions of themselves, each other, and their communities to come to their own conclusions, and that the media work is only simply one aspect of that dialogue. So in the relationships that I built through the Lunch Love community process over years, which were really very deep for me personally and made like a very deep empathetic, I didn't know that much about health disparities in our community, so I started to learn a lot as well. So when I went to put together all the little bits and pieces for that short Berkeley versus Big Soda, I put together a participatory media workshop with about 12 of the stakeholders in Berkeley to actually come up with all of the ideas on pieces of paper on a wall, and to think through what were some of the dreams they would have of seeing something that could help in the future. And it was really revelatory to me because I learned so much more about what was inside people's feelings about having had this particular experience, which was very deep for a lot of people because it was the first time they really felt engaged politically in their community, especially young people. So I found all these different prisms of choices that could be made for the final piece that I felt then good about because it had bubbled up from this participatory workshop environment, which is just real life and not a lot of technology, but it surfaced many different parts of the story that I hadn't been really totally clear about myself. So this is what I kind of like to mean as iterative documentary, that possibly the stories never end. They kind of keep on going, and that is the wonder in many ways of transmedia and all the different kinds of tools that we have available.
Can I just jump in a teeny bit? I totally agree with you and with Gordon and with you. And I just want to hold up again the work of Nikki Zaleski, who is trained in trauma-informed theater, and she works with kids who've been victims of sexual abuse, primarily, in Chicago. And the equivalent of that kind of research that you do in collaboration with your subjects happened in a workshop form for us over the course of 2 days. And a lesser version of that happened with me just going out and meeting protesters at various locations, which was partially scouting for locations, but partially me getting to know them and talk. Now, I will say that in 2 of those locations, I went undercover, which I'm not quite sure how I feel about. And there's, this whole spectrum of journalism and documentary filmmaking, and we can talk about all that stuff too if you want. But I also think that for me, it's still very much a work in progress to figure out what those best practices are when it comes to doing this kind of work.
I know there's some other questions. Yes, there we go. I believe you had your question first, yeah.
Hi, thank you. I'm wondering what kind of considerations are being made to, I'm going to sort of explain what I mean. Multiple disciplines in science are showing that the brain responds to an experience by creating grooves in the brain, a certain mix of neurotransmitters, and then that's the impression in the physiological and emotional everything of the human being. And so when we have an experience, we then get that impression. And the more we have that experience, the deeper the grooves are in the brain, and the more we have. So if we're in a negative experience, that happens over and over, and it can almost become normalized. So I'm wondering what kind of considerations are being made in terms of immersing someone in a negative experience so that they're in that negative experience. Are we in some way normalizing that? Which I would argue that a lot of like war movies and all of that do. We're so used to violence in the United States as being sort of a normal thing. So it's even deeper in a virtual reality context. And so I know in your goals are to create empathy, and then, you know, that tears are coming out is wonderful because there's empathy there, but where are you drawing the line between, you know, maybe making more or like a PTSD experience rather than an empathetic experience to cause action for something? So it's, you know, it's kind of a dangerous tool. So you have to, you know, what are you guys thinking about in terms of that?
That's such a great question. A couple of things. One is that we're working with Stanford soon on evaluating some of the interaction between the content and your brain. I would caution that the conclusion around the normalization of violence or normalization of negativity is very controversial research. There are lots of scientists who think the opposite, and so it's not quite there yet. I don't know what the conclusion is yet, but it's significant. One of the tensions in this piece was between those of us who wanted to mostly focus on the third scene where you are being yelled at with all kinds of abusive things, which is the most negative of the three experiences. And what we all agreed on the first scene, because that's also just getting you used to VR. It's very simple, but it's also creating a kind of caring environment and context, and it's debunking myths about what the inside of an abortion clinic looks like, but that's pretty subtle. But the second scene was where we had the most tension, because you can also develop a sense of empathy for the protester who, you know, within the context of his own experience and goals is trying to give very loving, caring advice, which is basically to go to a fake pregnancy center where they tell you how you need to give up your baby for adoption. But nonetheless, one of the functions it's there for, I think, is to try to temper the intense negativity of the final scene. So I would say that we were kind of aware of all those things, but I don't know that we're in command of all that research enough to know exactly what kind of grooves we want to make in your brain, which is probably a good thing, because anyone who can make those grooves is probably evil.
Yeah, there's a lot of great questions, I can tell. So let's start with this person in the front.
Helen, you talked about building community in your media. I guess you do that to some extent online. So,
Absolutely.
And how do you make online community building positive and not get in, you know, the anonymity of the online world and creates a lot of problems in some communities. Some seem to do better than others, and I just wonder what your experience is in terms of making things happen positively and constructively when creating community spaces online.
Well, it's, you know, hashtag people power. It was mostly focusing our research, real people, meaning real interns, looking for all the different kinds of people online and organizations that are interested in these kinds of stories and food advocacy. And then offering, you know, on the phone and through email, the films as a way to put on their blogs and talk about the issues, write about it, you know, old-fashioned, you know, what mine kind of gets down to is really old-fashioned organizing across these different platforms. So it was always done with an intention of positivity and outreach, because none of the shorts, if you see them, you know, are provocative in the sense of trying to force you into thinking a certain thing, but to open up your mind to all the imaginative possibilities. So in that case, someone could have written some horrible thing about it, but that was one of the interesting ways that you know, flow out into the beginning of the internet experiences. And that's what happened, but rarely did that never really happen.
Sound
in
like
that
you're
case.
building on existing online communities. And,
Yeah, and partner organizations and partner individuals. So it was all with really great intentions going out there. And you know what? It kind of works. It sort of was magical.
Nice, great.
And there's a question all the way in the back, too, by the wall.
Thank you, and good morning. This is such an honor and exciting time in media. My name is Kevala, and I'm part of a very special new project that's fostering transformational and experimental media right here in Ashland. And it's super undercover right now. We haven't done any promotion or enrollment. So I do want to give a little shout out and plant a seed. It's called The Arc, and it's being fostered as a multimedia play shop and innovation hub. And the dream by the collective young people that are there, which will grow into a rotation of membership, is to really have an immersive and transformative environment of the best that transmedia is bringing into our lives as we speak. And I'm curious if there's anything that fosters right now this level of engagement and empathic experience, but that could be perhaps transferred into a big magic box, utilizing the best of black box theater, which my background is a hybrid of theater production and then above the line Hollywood film production, which I realized I am being called to leverage that organizational background into transformational media, a real holistic wellness, and putting people in immersive environments where the grooves that we're making are grooves of inspiration and wellness and empowerment, and really restructuring the brain with geometries and light and sound and a transformational healing environment. So VR that takes us into a collective experience where we're sitting inside the black box theater and having those kinds of interactions. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to the technology and how soon you think that will come. I know lasers and holograms are right now really small little tabletop experiences, and we're trying to put all, the magic beings inside of the box and then play. So thank you for hearing that, and any ideas that you have. And the Arc Ashland is our brand new Facebook if you'd like to get involved locally and help us build out this really incredible transmedia experience. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, right in the back row.
Something that I worry about, transmedia is very technology dependent, and technology tends to be expensive. I'm sure one of the greatest challenges that you guys face is raising the money to be able to pay for all this stuff. And then I watch things like Berkeley versus Big Soda, where these big corporations throw around $23 million. I gather that transmedia is still so cutting edge that they haven't figured out that it may be an effective tool for them to use. But I worry that at some point they may indeed figure that out and start throwing money at it and trying to use transmedia for their purposes, which...
They already do. There's already a whole range of transmedia projects and advertising in Hollywood film. So this is another kind of both a transmedia and VR in those huge corporate contexts. So this is a kind of different utilization of both transmedia and VR. And so the technology does facilitate a quick startup and access to a lot of people, but definitely there are powers that can use this and do already and have been for several years.
I just want to echo, Vicky's writing a book about transmedia, so she'll really be able to define it. But I don't think transmedia is new at all. With the advent of television, and then you can go to a store and sign up for a raffle. That's transmedia, right? That's two different platforms. We do a radio series, and now we're doing a live stage performance based on the radio series with the kids in Our Precious Lives. And what Helen has done, involves a lot of different platforms, including the face-to-face platform. And certainly, the Blair Witch Project probably was the first in this era of transmedia to start using it as a way to bring people to the theater. by doing online and also in your mailbox tricks to get you involved in the story.
Really, as we finally leave the 20th century and we leave the proscenium theater, you know, and the screens are everywhere, I think what you're hearing is artists who are coming from a different place than corporate media, trying to take control in some little way of the tools for the public good, for the aesthetic good, for personal transformation. So, you know, that's the battle, really, that we're trying to fight against the matrix, right?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that a lot of, I won't pretend to say that VR is cheap. It's not. VR, just to give you some sense, this costs about $230,000 for a 7-minute film. Like, that's absurd, right? But it's startup land, and so there was some money and there's, you know, interest, but it's solving all the post-production problems that are endlessly expensive and take up all your time. But transmedia itself, I think, has the opposite effect. It's figuring out what platform your audience is on, how to reach them. You know, Twitter is practically free and a very effective transmedia strategy.
The way that you flow, the way that the media is disseminated across platforms with your little deck of cards of different sort of possibilities that you're going to throw out there. And I won't ever, you know, want to end the panel without saying, and what we also have to be thinking about is the way that we preserve and keep, you know, these very ephemeral forms.
Yes.
Which is another panel altogether.
Yeah, that's another panel. And then I want to say one other thing, too, before we switch over to Brad's demo video, is also I'll just do a little shout out for education and media literacy and critical skills, because just like, yay, okay. Just because, so 2010, there was the Conspiracy for Good. Do people know this one? The Nokia Tim Kring project, which looks like it's a game for social change, but it's actually to sell phones, to sell Nokia phones. So, but you really need to be understanding how these cross-platform things are being implemented, and you really need critical skills to really be able to unpack this. So I'm going to do a big shout out for not just media literacy, but digital literacy. Greg Ulmer, scholar at the University of Florida, calls it electracy. So that's digital literacy in the electronic age. So let's just kind of, I'll just throw that out. I have my educator hat on, and I'm going to have Brad maybe show your video right now. I know. Do we have a, yeah. Okay, let's.
Here, I'll give you the mic. Just so. Thank you so much for the important work that you're all doing. I mean, it's people like you that are going to save us all, and all the people in the community helping you. I think I really am excited to hear a little bit about the technical aspects of the VR production. I'm looking at the camera and I'm thinking, did you set it in the car and then get out of the car? How is it recording all the way around? And then I also wanted to ask what your favorite distribution platforms are for both of you in getting the VR is obviously completely different, so I'm wondering what camera you used, how you shot that scene, and then how you're getting it out. And then for Helen, I'm wondering what your favorite platform is in communicating to the public and getting your films out. Is there anything new and different and exciting that you could share with us?
Okay. I'm going to do a quick little run through, and then actually, just so you know, it's very complicated. And if anyone is going to be in Los Angeles or lives there, April 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, we and 5 other VR people are going to do like a panel Thursday night, and then Friday a demo day, and then Saturday is an all-day workshop on how to make VR, where we're going to break down how we did this. That's through the International Documentary Association. But the big questions I can say really quickly. So first of all, to shoot it, it's 360, so it's an array of cameras. Now there's some on the market. Jaunt is a manufacturer of VR cameras, but we didn't like all the products because they all have to be 4 feet away, and we were going for intimacy. We wanted to be here, so we wanted a wider angle lens, just like in documentary. So we used GoPros. But that was a problem because they're not set up to sync together. So luckily, Jeff, my partner, wrote some code that would sync the GoPros together, which he'll share. I mean, it's all open. And then we also realized there's a battery problem. So we took the batteries out because we didn't want them to overheat since it's an array of 8 cameras. And we ran them all off an external battery. So we just basically hacked the GoPros. And then we 3D printed a holder, like an array, which he'll share too. I mean, and we did lots of prototypes and stuff, and we did, positioning really matters because you're not like, changing in the moment. So it's like, do you want to be here and look down a little bit? Do you want to be right on? Sam and Christina are different heights. So, so we did a lot of testing for that scene. And then making sure that we could have visibility at the windows, so we did lots of run-throughs to make sure. But then the real fun starts in post-production. So you use a program called 4Eyes, which is the stitching program. And that means because you're taking all these cameras, right? So you have to stitch them all together. And the big challenge is to avoid what's called parallax, like the warping of each of them. You want it to be a seamless sphere. So that takes a lot of work and specialized work. And we ended up stitching them together because there wasn't really a program that could do it automatically for us. That was very tedious. And then there's the audio. So for that scene, just to break down that scene, I think we had 16 mics in the field. Each of the women had mics on. We mic'd the car, I think, in 4 or 5 different places. And then we had me with a boom pretending to be a radio reporter out in the field. We had 2 other people wearing wireless mics out in the field as well. I'm trying to remember. And then Rich, our sound guy, is hiding under a blanket in the back of the car. So if you watch it once just through and look behind you the whole time, you'll see him move at one point. So because we wanted to capture what's called, with this 360 sound, and we used what's called an ambisonic mic for one of our mics. So it points in all directions, and we put that right in the middle of the car to get that kind of sound. And then you have to audio mix this. There's a lot of different tools, but Unity is the game engine that we mostly used for this. So you map the sounds to different places in the sphere, and then as you turn your head, that's all responding to what you're looking at. Yeah, so it's complicated. The camera operator isn't there. That's what I was saying. You have to get away, and you have to composite out the camera. So the downward-facing camera, that's all a big compositing job. Yeah.
Every single distribution methodology has a different flavor to it and a different set of intensive labor, intense efforts. So when it's online, it's really same old thing, people outreaching to people to try to make that contact so that they're interested. And so that takes its own flow. Those 15,000 views of that little film just didn't happen randomly. They happen because of a concerted campaign, so to speak, of getting it out to the right people. So that is one way of doing it. But for me personally, when you ask, I know everyone here will wonder, but that intimate town hall meets theater, media social, where the films integrate with live conversation and curiosity and inquiry are really the ones that I love the most. But then there's an actual DVD or streaming product, which is stable compared to what I feel is the fluidity and instability of the internet over time, because this lasted for 3.5 years online, which means that, there's a decay process that happens. So the idea of having an actual product at the end is also, compelling, because then it's not self-distributed, it's in the hands of another distributor to get it to another set of audiences. So I can't really say that one form is specifically better than another, but again, it's the deck of cards, it's the array that filmmakers now really have to be thinking about, and that form follows function. And that's a wonderful thought.
Okay, so we're actually out of time because we need to, so let's just thank our panelists here. Yeah. I was under strict instructions to end at a certain time, both so people can go to the next film and also for people who want to see the demo. So with that, I'll just let Brad show your clip, right?
All right, so I'm just going to end it with, this is a short little video with Maddie Power on our staff who worked on Across the Line showing you how to put together your cardboard. And I will stay here if anybody wants instructions. And if you want to try it in the Gear VR, there's more cardboard up here. You can take these all home. There's a swivel chair up here, so if you're interested in trying the Gear VR,